By a stroke of fate, I met my wife Linda. It was also by a twist of fate that I found out she was cheating on me. Although the events were separated by years, the two events occurred in the same place. That place was at my workplace in the city of Honolulu, Hawaii. The case I started came about by accident. I went to the University of Hawaii with the firm intention of getting my MBA and then getting a job at a Fortune 500 company. Even with public schooling, I still had to work to finish school. In high school, I became fascinated with computers, so to earn extra money in college, I used my acquired skills in computer repair. Eventually, I started building my own and selling them at a lower price than Best Buy. I earned a bachelor's degree, but decided not to go to graduate school. I had started my own business, so why would I want to work for someone else? In college, I realized I wasn't good at interacting with people. That lesson was as valuable as my degree. I met Linda's brother Don before I even met her. He was having trouble with his computer, or rather his father's computer. He brought over his dad's old Intellivision gaming console. It was a little-known piece of gaming equipment, dating back to the 1980s. Don's dad was nostalgic about it, and Don wanted it restored for his dad's birthday. The thing hadn't worked in over 10 years, but Don found it in the attic. Don Eldridge was stacked like a brick. His chest was close to a rectangle. He played soccer as a defensive back in high school and college. Back then, he let his curly brown hair grow long and wild, and he had a beard to match. Add to that a very large nose, which could have been called a trunk, combined with the fact that his name was Don, and inevitably someone called him Mastodon. That name stuck. Every time he made a feint, fans would make an elephantine noise. Although he looked imposing in appearance, his demeanor couldn't have been friendlier. Don was always the guy who would reach out to pick up the player he had just dropped. He had a sense of fair play, as well as some intimidating skills on the soccer field. If he hadn't injured his knee his senior year at the University of Hawaii, he might have made it to the NFL. The Mastodon belonged to Hawaiian royalty. Despite not being athletic in the slightest, I've always followed the Rainbow Warriors. Yes, that's the actual team name adopted by our shared alma mater long before rainbows became fashionable. While I decided that continuing on to college wasn't for me, I had some loyalty to the place where I had spent 4 years learning what I didn't want to do next. I was a little flabbergasted. A mastodon! I can't believe Hawaii's most eligible bachelor came to me. My name is Ryan, by the way. Ryan Novak. He gave me a friendly clap on the back, almost dislocating my shoulder. Well, Ryan, I won't be a bachelor for long. For some reason, a woman accepted my offer to marry my ugly ass. My sister is the most attractive one in the family. That didn't set the bar too high. I gave him my price, which was discounted because of my appreciation for the man. I asked for an autographed picture of him. My marketing classes were not wasted. 2 weeks later, I actually met Linda when she came to pick up Don's restored comp because he was doing local advertising or taking tourists on his boat for Mastodonty Tour. I was blown away. She had the same curls in her long brown hair as her brother. Her nose wasn't as prominent and she was a few inches shorter. In fact, she had many of the same features in a much more attractive and petite package that also included breasts and dimples. She wasn't stunning, but she was definitely attractive and had obvious sexuality. We started dating, and that's how I met her best friend, Don's wife, Candace. Candace and Linda had grown up together since elementary school. Candace had been in love with Don since she hit puberty. Eventually, Candace turned into a woman, and Don noticed his sister's friend and started courting her. Or something like that. It's the saccharine version, I'm told. Candace has turned into a hottie. She's one of those Hawaiian women you see in the tourist ads. A mix of Asian and Native Islander with God knows what other bits of attractiveness mixed in. I had no doubt she had her sights set on him, and he was powerless to resist. All three of them shared memories that I wasn't a part of, but I eventually settled in. The only thing that was noticeable was that Candace was never called by the obvious nickname Candy. She thwarted every attempt to use the nickname, and one night when I asked her why, she said, "Candy sounds like a stripper who was empty-headed. I never wanted anyone to think of me that way." Don and Candace got married, and soon after, Linda and I did. Linda and I had 2 children. Don was shooting blanks, and he and Candace both wanted kids, so they adopted 2. They adopted each child about the same time Linda had ours. Adoption does take time, and it was like we were all in sync with each other. It was great to be part of a strong quartet. We loved being around each other. All the kids played together, and we were in each other's lives almost daily. Naturally, something so perfect can't last. The gods hate eternal happiness in our lives. I grew my business so much that Linda didn't have to work. Not only did I repair and build computers, but I also restored old arcade games and home game systems. The change came when our children were old enough to go to school. Linda wanted to work part-time. I had no problem with that, so why not? I didn't want my beloved to be bored. She got a job with a credit card company in their call center. It was 4 hours a day, and she could always send the kids to school and be back before they got home. I was happy. She was happy. We all should have been on the poster of model families. It was Candace who accidentally revealed to me the fact that Linda was cheating on me. It was a typical workday for me when Candace called me and said, "Ryan, I really need you to work on my computer. This is an emergency. I need it right now." The emergency was that her laptop was a piece of metal that wouldn't even start. Candace was an aspiring writer, and her stories were only in that laptop. I assured her I'd do my best after lecturing her on the necessity of backing up her work on a flash drive, and then I dug in deeper. It wasn't that hard to restore the data. Candace downloaded something she shouldn't have. Curiosity took over, and I started looking for the culprit. It turned out to be a picture that Linda had emailed. In that email was a picture of a very handsome man with his shirt off. I later learned that his name was Hunter Sampson. Linda's text accompanying the photo read, "That's my boss." The photo plus the exclamation point led me to investigate Candace and Linda's email. Without going into too much detail, Linda's boss sent her this picture and she shared it with her best friend. "I will say this for my sister-in-law," she questioned Linda about what happened. What had she said that her boss saw fit to send her a picture of him showing off his magnificent abs? She was ruthless in this email exchange when Linda tried to dismiss it, despising it as just a picture of him surfing. This angered Candace, and she explicitly said that Linda was very close to crossing the line. Linda backed down and agreed. She said she wouldn't encourage anything like that again. Things were looking good. Still, I was suspicious. Was it really over after Candace told her off? I wasn't sure, so I looked at Linda's laptop. Knowing she knew what I did for a living, I knew she'd be smart enough to delete any damning emails, and smart enough to empty the trash can if she sent something that shouldn't be noticed. What she hasn't deleted is her sent messages. It confuses so many people. That folder was a revelation. Many of her messages were in response to a previous message, so I quickly got a pretty good picture. Linda sent him a picture of her breasts. She didn't send any of her pussy, even though Hunter had asked for it. She told him she would send one when he sent a picture of his buddy. He just told her she had to see him in person, because no picture could do it properly. After that, the subsequent emails got even worse. Yes, they had sex after that. They both raved about how good it was every time they met and couldn't wait for the next time they met. I did what any normal person would do, going through my wife's private email and discovering what I had discovered. I decided to meet her face-to-face that evening. It had to be handled delicately because it was a Wednesday, and the kids had school the next day. I didn't want the neighbors to call the police. Kids tend to remember moments like that. So when I got home that evening, I answered her when she said, "Hey, honey, how was your day? Let's talk about it later." She seemed to think I was troubled about something. I must have had a terrible face. She didn't press me. We ate dinner and put the kids to bed. We walked over to the couch, and she looked at me and said, "Whatever is on your mind, I hope you know you can talk to me about it. I'm so glad I can. It can be hard for a man to openly express his feelings. You've really made me feel comfortable, so I can express everything right now. I put my hand on top of hers. Linda seemed touched. Of course you can, dear. I'm your protection. She squeezed my hand, and I squeezed it back, looking her straight in the eye and saying, "It really bothers me that you're sleeping with your boss. So I'd really like to talk about how we're going to handle the divorce so it doesn't hurt the kids." She pulled her hand out of mine like it was radioactive. Then her face turned white and she made a sound like a dying animal, jumped out the door, got in her car, and drove away. It didn't quite go the way I expected. I had a whole speech prepared, and her departure prevented it. It was a worse offense than cheating. I mean, I actually rehearsed so many select comments in my head. It only got worse. Now I had to get the kids ready for morning school, and that wasn't my thing at all. I had no way to vent or get an explanation, and I was suddenly a single dad with 2 kids. Linda remained silent for the next 2 days. I had no idea where she was or what she was thinking. She just disappeared. Explaining to the kids where she went was a stalling tactic. Until I heard from her, I had no idea what to say so as not to traumatize them. So I told them what I thought they could understand without worrying. Mom is visiting Aunt Candace and Uncle Don. As it turned out, this was true. Linda was living with her best friend and her brother. I found this out over the phone from Don, who invited me over to his house to talk to Linda without the kids. I love Don and Candace. This was clearly an intervention. Curiosity made me agree, as well as a desire to finally give my speech. The intervention took place at Don and Candace's house. Don and Candace were sitting on the couch, a friendly couple. Linda and I were sitting in comfortable chairs facing the couch. Looking back, I realized it was a good arrangement. It was as if Don and Candace weren't taking sides, rather we were both on trial. Don started the conversation by saying, "Ryan, I love you. You have been a wonderful husband to my sister, and I will always adore you for that. However, I know my sister has hurt you. I hurt too, brother. I want you to know that. I hurt for both of you." My fingernails dug into the armrests of the expensive chair I was sitting in when I said, "I'm glad you feel my pain. I'm glad you can empathize. I really want Hunter to share my pain too. I mean, he really played a part in it. I wish he could feel the pain all over his body because that's how I feel right now." "I hope you're not thinking of physical abuse," Candace interjected. "Just a little bit. I want to hit him with a cricket bat." "Why not with a baseball bat?" Candace asked with a slight smile. "Because I don't want to go to jail for assault, and I think a cricket bat would probably cause less injury. I also like the sight of that flat bat spanking his ass. I want his body to hurt so much that it hurts to put on or take off his clothes. This is impractical for 2 reasons. Why? We live on an island where no one plays cricket. So where are you going to find a cricket bat?" Don was right. The second reason. Violence never solves anything. I disagree. It stopped fascism in Europe. You can't compare Hunter to a Nazi. Well, you're right. There's no comparison. The Nazi never had sex with my wife. I know the worst thing for you is lying and deceit. This breach of trust is going to be hard to undo. I was silent for a few seconds. Everyone looked at me, waiting to see how I would react to her overture. That's not really the worst of it. The worst part is that you've had sex with someone other than me. Linda tried to keep what she thought was a chance for me to accept her sincere and remorseful confession. "I only had sex with him 7 times. I nodded. What a relief. Thank God only 7 times and not some unforgivable number. Since you all seem to be experts on the subject, what exactly would that number be? I looked at everyone in the room. No one answered the question. I didn't expect anyone to answer since the question was rhetorical. Don did his best to evade the answer. Once, twice, 100 times. That's not the most important thing. What is important is that Linda wants to restore your marriage and is incredibly remorseful. Candace backed him up before a second had even passed. Can you be sure that the problem you're facing isn't your ego? I didn't even have to think about how to answer that. I can answer that one thing for sure, Candace. Of course it's my ego. I just can't believe you all here are trying to minimize it. Don said, "Listen to me, brother. Your ego is something you can control. Nobody is trying to minimize it. You can strengthen yourself by defeating your ego. Why let it stand in the way of true love? Look at it this way. Forgiveness is a gift you give not only to the other person, but to yourself." I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone or in Los Angeles. So if I had an affair with a woman 7 times in 3 months, would you forgive me? Oh, yes, yes, and yes again. I wouldn't like it. It's the worst thing I can imagine, but I would take you back. I'll prove it to you. Have an affair, hang out with me, I deserve it. I want you to have an affair. Please do it if it'll help us get back together. It could be with anyone. I conceded that she was saying the right thing. I asked the question, "Linda, why did you do it?" "It has nothing to do with you, Ryan. When Candace and I were dating as a couple, she always had an attractive friend and I always had a less attractive friend. I never got the handsome one. This was the only time a handsome guy was interested in me. It didn't improve my mood. I know I'm not handsome." What surprised me was that Candace turned out to be more angry than I was. "Are you really blaming this on me, bitch?" I was afraid Candace would scrunch up her face, but Don held his wife back. Linda got up from her chair and said, "I was just jealous. Oh, please don't think I blame you. You're my sister. That was my insecurity. I don't want to lose our friendship." Candace stopped pulling out of Don's embrace and said, "We always have been and always will be sisters. I'm sorry you didn't get the handsome men. You deserve it, although no handsome man compares to my Don. I wish you'd learned early on that looks aren't the most important thing." I felt like the conversation had somehow slipped away from me, and at that moment I was more concerned about myself than anything else. I tried to put things back on track. "Candace, I know you love your best friend, and you say I'm a good friend too. If I cheated on Linda, would you be as forgiving? Would you have talked her into making up with me?" Candace somehow stepped back from the emotional moment and said, "Look, she was able to share her life. What she did had nothing to do with you. She was living 2 different lives." I said, "That sounds like utter nonsense." "I know it's hard for men to understand," Candace said, "but all women are capable of it to one degree or another. That was unexpected, too." I turned around. "Don, if Candace cheated on you for 3 months, would you forgive her?" Don looked at me resentfully. "That's a ridiculous question. Candace is not some dirty slut who would betray her husband and spread her legs for some man and risk her marriage." Linda began to cry with a wail. Don ran into an obstacle and backed up. "What I meant was that we can all be tempted, even Candace. She'll always overcome temptation, but if she doesn't, I'll forgive her. Even if she gives in to temptation 7 times? Once, twice, 100 times. That's not the point. It's about dealing with your male ego." Well, my love for Candace is stronger than that. That sounded like bullshit to me, so I asked his wife, "Candace, if you cheated on Don, who I know you love, would you expect him to forgive you?" "I can't believe you're even asking me. I'm not some whore." Linda shrieked and collapsed into a fetal position. Candace ran up and hugged her. "No, you're not, Linda. You're not a slut just because you've had sex with another man other than your husband." Linda howled even louder. "Having sex with someone else doesn't make you a slut. You're not a cheater. You didn't do it for the money. You did it because you have low self-esteem issues." Linda started shaking and punching herself in the face. I could see Don contemplating whether to call an ambulance. Don and Candace were holding Linda's hands. I tried again to summon the voice of reason into the room after Linda held back from attacking herself. I looked at Candace. "So let's see if I got this right. Linda wants me to have an affair. Don says he'll forgive you for having an affair. You say it's okay for someone to want sex with an attractive person. Did I get that right?" "Yes," Don replied. "We all tell you that." Candace, you also told me that I should love Linda as much as you do because I'm the one who married her. Yes, Ryan, you married her for better or worse. Don and I show more concern for her well-being than you do. She's obviously hot. Well, I said, you've all given me a lot to think about. It seemed like a good time to apologize and get it over with. I liked Don, I liked Candace, and I liked Linda a hell of a lot. To cut them all out of my life would be painful. However, that evening turned into a circus, and not in a good way. I left that night feeling like I had ruined their close relationship, but none of them really cared about me. I went home and stared at the ceiling for hours, pondering. Around 3 a.m., an epiphany came over me. I actually slept for 2 hours after running it through my head several times. I woke up to the doorbell ringing after drinking my first cup of coffee. Yes, I wake up after my first cup of coffee. I don't remember how I somehow got the kids off to school. I wasn't sure I fed them. It was Candace. I invited her in, but was wary. The previous night had been a shit show. I grabbed a second cup of coffee and poured her one. I'm sorry about the shit show last night, Candace said. I almost spit out my coffee when she echoed my thoughts. After a few seconds, I said, I've decided you're right. You show more concern for her well-being than I do, so I have a solution. I'm glad you've come to your senses. I paused for dramatic effect. You and I are going to have an affair, 7 meetings. After that, Linda will be completely forgiven. What? Seriously, what? Linda said I could have an affair if it would help, so I'm taking her word for it. Don said he'd forgive you if you cheated on him, so I'll take his word for it. You said you were eager for me to forgive Linda, so I'm taking you at your word. I have to talk to Don about this before I even think about it. It would ruin the situation. Linda kept it from me, lied and kept me in the dark. It has to be the same. Don has already said he'll forgive you, so you don't need to consult him. Linda never told me. I'm the one who caught her. Tell him when it's over if you have to. Hell, I want you to tell him after it's over, but not before. It still won't be as sneaky as Linda's behavior. I'll be sure to tell Linda, too. How the hell am I supposed to see Don every day and keep it a secret? You have to share your life. I've heard you say that all women can do it better than men. I don't think I can do it. There's too much to think about. Why don't you just find someone else? Well, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to find the right hottie that I'm really attracted to. I'll probably have to hire an escort. I'm not comfortable with that. You have a vested interest and an amazing body, so you are the one who is my option. She replied, I'll have to think about it. Of course, that meant no. I wasn't surprised that Candace didn't really mean what she said that night. She just didn't try all that nonsense on herself. I was making plans for a divorce. Suddenly, 2 days later, Candace changed her mind. I've decided to accept your request. I wish I could say it was because she was crazy about me. But alas, the real reason was domestic, and perhaps predictable. She showed up at my house in a frenzy, not even knocking, just opening the door and barging in. I can't take it anymore. She's driving Don and I crazy. She's destroying my marriage. I could have said something sarcastic at that point, but when things are going well, it's best to mind your own business. Which was a shame, because I did have something to say. Candace agreed to all my terms. Her only demand was that I would actually forgive Linda completely if Candace followed through. Honestly, I didn't expect her to ever agree with everything I said, so I hesitated for just a moment. After a brief pause followed. Absolutely. I'm only doing this because she's my best friend. I'm not too fond of you right now. She agreed, though, and that was what really mattered. We started working out the details. It'll look suspicious if you forgive Linda immediately. How do we sell this to Linda and Don that you're taking Linda back? I had an answer to that question. All I needed to do was offer Linda a lifeline. That afternoon, I called Linda during my lunch break. Linda, I need you to report your relationship with Hunter to Human Resources. Report what? I can't claim it was sexual harassment. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not asking you to do that, my dear. I'm not asking you to do anything unethical that will affect your conscience. However, in reading your employee handbook, I found that there is a policy against communication between a supervisor and a subordinate. You know, one of the measures to prevent the possibility of sexual harassment. You really work for a good company. So just report the relationship. She did. Turns out Hunter was married to a very wealthy woman with a prenup. It's a gift when your enemy puts his own head in the noose and all you have to do is knock the chair out from under your feet. Let's just say Hunter got in trouble and left Hawaii, so he was never seen again. After Linda made it, I welcomed her back home. I greeted her with kisses and we made passionate love that night she came home. Linda and I were together again. Although it was conditional, I hadn't set aside my reservations. Linda could feel it. We made love and acted like a family, but she knew I hadn't fully forgiven her. She knew there was still a wall. She was right. That wall wouldn't come down until Candace made up her mind. Candace didn't back down when I agreed to our first date. I decided it would be spectacular. I booked a room at the Four Seasons Hotel with a king-size bed. I placed rose petals on the lightly fluffed bed. I lit candles and made sure they wouldn't set off the smoke alarm because I had turned it off. The champagne bottle and vase of strawberries she'll see when she comes in. It would be an illicit affair. I would play the role of lover to the end. I wanted her in on it, so it was only right that I was in on it too. It turned out to be easy for me. I was looking forward to it, and even though part of me felt like Candace might give up at any moment, I wasn't going to be the one to kill her mood. I was going to do my part and trust that she would do hers. If not, we would just go back to where we started. Candace disrupted my plans. She showed up wearing a long coat that was very inappropriate for the climate and carrying what might as well have been an overnight bag. Ryan, what's with the strawberry champagne? That's not going to work. Why not? I already have the most romantic, wonderful best lover in the house, so I don't want you to even dream of being the best lover. Sweep those fucking rose petals off the bed. I also don't eat strawberries and just give me a few minutes in the bathroom. Does that mean you're backing off? No, it just means we're gonna have sex, not make love. I better not see a single pink petal on the bed when I get out of the bathroom. Walking in with her bag, she slammed the door shut. The woman who emerged from the bathroom was bundled up in a black bra that was a size smaller and black panties that looked like they had been painted on. Her newly applied lipstick was a red shade that I think was called Take Me. So if it works, I'm Candy. You don't make love to me, you don't call me Candace, I'm Candy. I'm not your lover. Every time we meet, I'm Candy, and I'm here to sleep with you. That's my whole plan. I was all ears. Call me Candace one time, and it's over. From now until we're done, I'm Candy. Do you have a problem with that? What for? I grabbed her, and our tongues were dancing in a flash. This wasn't at all what I'd envisioned or planned. This was so much better. Candace, or was it Candy, led me over to the bed, pushed me back on it, and just pulled my pants off. I thought I was going to die after that. Our bedtime conversation afterward was a little unconventional. I was in a post-orgasmic fog, and she was talking while I listened. At that point, I was very receptive to everything she had to say. Here's how it works. You don't have sex with Candace. You sleep with Candy. You screw up once, and I can't deal with it. Don't say shit. Just go along with it, okay? In retrospect, I think it might have been a CIA technique, although it might have just been the endorphins. I agreed. Good. Now Candy wants to get fucked, so you better not disappoint me. The next encounters were a variation of the first. We'd fuck. She'd turn me on again, and then we'd fuck again. Most of all, she liked doggy style. She also liked to talk dirty. When she talked like that, I couldn't tell if she hated me or if she liked it. I assumed it was a little bit of both because it intensified with each subsequent meeting. Organizing these meetings became increasingly difficult. Sneaking around was much harder than I had imagined. Much of this difficulty stemmed from the fact that Linda called me every chance she got to inform me where she was and that she wasn't cheating on me. This made it much harder for me to cheat on her. I also assumed that Candace had a hard time hiding it from Don, but we never talked about it. When we did get together, it was a fucking marathon. As my affair with Candy continued, I had, to my surprise, almost completely lost my animosity toward Linda. Each infrequent rendezvous of hot sex with Linda's best friend made me appreciate making love to my wife even more. After each illicit sex rendezvous with Candy, I became more and more comfortable with Linda. We were getting back to where we were before. I appreciated the insatiable sex with Candy, but it also made me appreciate the tender connection with Linda. I wondered if she felt the same way when she was juggling her sex with Hunter while still loving me. The only awkward moments at first were when the four of us were together. Don or Linda would make perfectly innocent remarks, but at the same time make my brain say, "Don't look at Candace. Don't look at Candace. Don't look at Candace. Don't fucking look at Candace." For example, Don once said, "I admire you, Ryan. I know it's been hard for you. You didn't take the easy way out. You could have hired an attractive prostitute as revenge, but you didn't. You offered to make it up to Linda, and she did. Good for you, brother." While I was thinking, why does Don think I don't deserve anything more than a prostitute? Reason intervened, and then, "Don't you dare make eye contact with Candace." So I said, "Thanks, bro." Candace seemed completely at ease. I have to admit there was something about women being better at compartmentalizing their lives. I, on the other hand, had a hard time with conversations with sexual overtones. While our kids played and the adults drank wine, Linda looked at Don and Candace and said, "You have helped Ryan and I to be together again." Then she kissed me. After we broke the kiss, all I could think was, "Don't look at Candace. Don't look at Candace." This was relatively easy since Candace also avoided meeting my eyes in these situations. Candace and Candy seemed like completely different people. Candy would send me messages as we got closer to meeting. And yes, it was Candy, not Candace. I worried that I might be contributing to multiple personality disorder, but dismissed the thought because I needed to save the marriage. Nothing worthwhile comes without a cost. Candy had been sending me pictures of her in seductive outfits. Yes, I had seen her naked before, but those pictures turned me on. I fucked Candy to prove my point to her, Don and Linda. I also had her because she was hot. I had no idea if my relationship with them would survive in the end, but I hoped so. I'm an idealistic asshole. Candy was more than true to her word. The exception was the last night. We had more time than usual since we didn't have to worry about getting caught. After that night, Candace made it clear that she was going to tell Don everything. We walked out with a final yay. That's the closest thing I can say. My ears were pinned by her hips, crushing my head. Then she rolled over onto her back, and for a few moments she just lay there, shivering with her whole body. I was shaking a little myself, and my ears were ringing from the way she had my skull in a vice. We lay in silence for a few minutes, maybe an hour. "How are you feeling?" Candy broke the silence. "I think I just died. Maybe we should just end on a high note and not go for round 2. She actually giggled before she said in her most girlish voice, "I was really hoping that the rumors about you being a slacker weren't true." I had 2 more orgasms after that, and I have no idea how many she had. We were both so loud and vocal, I'm surprised the other couples sleeping in that cheap motel didn't report us to management because we were interfering with their own sex. We definitely came out with a bang and more than a few sobs. After our last frenzied sex, I showered first and managed to mostly regain my equilibrium. Out went Candy, and when the bathroom door opened again, Candy was gone forever. Candace emerged from the bathroom in her usual modest attire. Her demeanor spoke for itself. We were done. It was good. Allowing yourself a sweet candy now and then is a treat, but a constant sweet diet will kill you. Candace left before me. There was no goodbye kiss, just a discussion of what we were going to do next. She was going to tell Don all about it tonight, and after that we would tell Linda everything. After all, it was a family affair. Candace would tell Don, and then we would all meet at my house. I told Linda that Don and Candace would come over after the kids were in bed. It was time to put everything on the table. Don had something come up, so he was going to be late. So it was just me, Candace, and Linda. I went first. Linda, I'm totally ready to forgive you. In fact, I already have. But before you accept it, I think Candace should speak up first. Linda was flustered to hear me say that, then looked questioningly at Candace. I slept with Ryan. Linda immediately gave Candace a hug. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh my God, you really are my sister. Candace hugged her back and said, It was the only way out. I love you. It was you, Linda said passionately. Now I don't have to worry about whether Ryan got sick or if someone got pregnant. Thank you. It didn't go the way I expected. I assumed the mixing was total crap. I didn't believe anyone was sincere in what they were saying. Turns out I was wrong, at least in regards to the women. When I'm wrong, I admit it, no matter how painful it is. I joined them in a group hug. I looked at Linda and said, All is truly forgiven. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. She jumped on top of me and kissed me. Thank you, my love. You will never regret it. Well, I think we all learned some valuable lessons here. In the end, I had to calm her down. I looked at Candace and said, You've shown me a lot, and I want to apologize to you. I embarrassed you, and you showed me the true meaning of love. I was wrong to ask you to do that. You made me a better person by showing me what true love is. Candace hugged me tightly and kissed me on the lips, not at all like she had been doing lately. I did this for both of you. You two belong together. The doorbell rang. I assumed it was Don. I'll get it. As I approached the door, I realized I had a lot to say. I had learned a lot about myself and the people who were close to me. Tears came to my eyes as I realized that the people around me were far more selfless than I was. I tried to point out how hypocritical those around me were, and I discovered that they weren't. It was really all about my male ego. I had to apologize to everyone, but especially Don. Don, the women out there are crying all over the place. To tell you the truth, I feel like crying myself. I've learned quite a few things about myself, and not all of them are good. I've learned some things about myself, too. I think we all may have gotten something wrong with the whole male ego thing. I dismissed the idea too lightly. Don had a husky tone and a strange look on his face. It took me a while to realize it, as it was a feeling I'd never seen from Don before. And then it hit me. Barely contained rage. Ah, that was it. At that moment, I had two questions. One, where did he find a cricket bat so quickly? Second, would I have a half-second head start on getting to the back door before an enraged mastodon with a sore knee caught up with me? I decided that the answer to the first question could wait, so I dashed across the house to the back door.